Ukrainian forces deliberately lured Russian troops into the Sumy region and then executed a carefully orchestrated plan that transformed the area into what military analysts are now calling a death zone. And just a few seconds into this report, let me first say hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Please subscribe and like my videos. Now let's dive deeper into what exactly happened. Sumy Oblast has always been considered one of Ukraine's vulnerable northern frontiers bordering Russia's Kursk and Belgorod regions, and for decades it was seen as a secondary axis of conflict compared to Donetsk or Luhansk, but in 2025 it suddenly became the focal point of one of the war's most daring maneuvers. Russian commanders believed that a push into Sumy would create a buffer zone, threaten Ukrainian supply lines, and distract Kiev from defending Donetsk. Yet instead of breaking Ukrainian defenses, they fell into a massive trap. Ukraine had prepared the ground weeks in advance. Local commanders ordered controlled withdrawals from villages that seemed strategically important, but were actually designed as bait. Russian drones and scouts observed these retreats and concluded the area was ripe for occupation, unaware that every route forward had been mapped, mined, and ranged in by Ukrainian artillery. As Russian battalions crossed the border and moved deeper, they were shadowed by reconnaissance drones. Every armored column, every supply truck, every attempted reinforcement was tagged and tracked. Ukrainian units then struck not at the spearhead but at the lifelines, launching HIMARS rockets and artillery barrages against bridges, fuel depots, and railway junctions in Belgorod and Kursk, cutting off the flow of ammunition and fuel. Within days, Russian troops inside Sumy realized they were advancing into a cul-de-sac with no secure resupply. Soldiers began to ration ammunition, armored vehicles ran low on fuel, and evacuation of the wounded became impossible under constant drone surveillance. Eyewitness accounts describe convoys ambushed on narrow rural roads, tanks bogged down in marshy fields, and isolated platoons reduced to fighting for survival while Ukrainian artillery rained down from hidden positions. Civilians in Sumy bore the brunt of the chaos as villages were shelled, homes destroyed, and families forced to flee into basements or across the countryside. Yet despite this suffering, Ukrainian morale surged because the strategy worked so effectively. What appeared as weakness was actually tactical genius. The concept was simple yet deadly. Lure the attacker in, let him stretch his lines, cut his supplies, and then strike from all sides. Russian command and control faltered under the pressure. Reinforcements that were supposed to arrive in hours were delayed for days. Electronic warfare disrupted communications, and command posts were hit with precision strikes, leaving soldiers cut off from their officers. Analysts note that Russia still had superior numbers on paper, but in practice those numbers were meaningless without food, fuel, or clear orders. Ukrainian forces exploited the chaos by sending small mobile groups armed with anti-tank guided missiles to harass Russian flanks. Drones hovered constantly overhead, feeding real-time data to artillery batteries, and loitering munitions picked off supply trucks. Every attempt at breakout turned into another ambush. This is why analysts call it a death zone, because in this pocket Russian troops were visible, vulnerable, and slowly being ground down politically. The implications are enormous. Ukrainian leaders pointed to Sumy as proof that Western supplied weapons and their own strategic ingenuity could defeat a larger invading force. Western capitals responded with renewed pledges of aid, while inside Russia pro-Kremlin commentators expressed frustration and outrage at the blunders of military planners, some even questioning whether launching such an offensive without secure logistics was reckless from the start. For ordinary Russians, the reports of casualties trickling back home created further discontent. But beyond politics lies the human tragedy. Families in Sumy have been displaced, children traumatized, hospitals overwhelmed, and entire neighborhoods reduced to rubble. Every tactical success for Ukraine still carries this terrible civilian cost. Yet in military terms, the Sumy operation demonstrates the future of warfare where drones and logistics strikes outweigh sheer numbers. Ukraine used deception reminiscent of World War II combined with 21st century precision firepower. The Russians believed they were chasing retreating defenders, but instead they were walking into a calculated killing field. Historically, such tactics resemble the classic encirclements at Stalingrad or the ambushes of the Vietnam War, where the side that controlled terrain and supply lines prevailed even against larger forces. The lesson is that wars are not only won by firepower but by intelligence, deception, and timing. Looking Ahead, the key question is whether Ukraine can consolidate this victory. If they secure the encircled zones and either force mass surrenders or destroy the trapped Union, it will mark one of the most significant setbacks for Russia in 2025. It would reduce pressure on Kharkiv, give Kiev breathing space to plan counteroffensives and embolden Western allies. However, if Russia commits fresh reserves and manages to break the trap, then the outcome could shift, but doing so will cost them dearly in men and equipment, and every delay means more losses inside the pocket. Reports already suggest that Russian soldiers are suffering from lack of food and medicine, some attempting to surrender, others trying desperate night breakouts only to be caught by drones with thermal cameras. Ukrainian soldiers interviewed describe the battlefield as littered with destroyed vehicles and scattered supplies, a grim testimony to the power of logistics warfare. And still the fighting continues, heavy artillery exchanges, drone swarms overhead, and civilians trying to survive between the crossfire. This battle may well be remembered as a turning point, a moment when Ukraine showed that clever tactics can turn geography into a weapon and trap a stronger invader. And as international observers track satellite images and casualty numbers, the world will soon know if Sumy becomes another symbol of Russian overreach. What is certain already is that the phrase death zone captures the reality. On the ground, a place where movement means exposure, where supplies cannot reach, and where an army slowly bleeds away its strength. And as this dramatic story unfolds, I'll keep bringing you updates. So make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below which part of the strategy you found most striking: the feigned retreats, the strikes on supply lines, or the relentless use of drones, because your thoughts matter and help guide future breakdowns. And until the next update, remember that behind every headline there are human lives, families uprooted, and soldiers caught in battles far beyond their control. So stay informed, stay critical, and keep watching.